China's vast and covert maritime operations have led to the emergence of what many now refer to as illegal floating cities. These are part of the distant water fishing fleets, a concept employed by several countries, but none to the extent, intensity, or ambition of China. With an insatiable appetite for seafood, China's objectives go beyond feeding its over 1 billion-strong population. It also aims to dominate the Asian seafood market entirely. The magnitude of this operation is staggering, consisting of thousands of vessels traveling in massive formations across the globe, systematically depleting fishing zones as they move. These maritime behemoths don't limit themselves to international waters. They frequently encroach on the exclusive fisheries of smaller nations, which are often unable to resist due to either a lack of military capability or economic dependence on China. Southeast Asia in particular bears the brunt of this maritime aggression. Here, Chinese fleets operate with impunity, often escorted by Chinese Coast Guard vessels that are armed with large caliber cannons and, in some cases, even anti-ship missiles. Additionally, China mobilizes a vast unofficial maritime militia composed of thousands of fishing boats and fishermen equipped with tools ranging from water cannons to automatic firearms. Backed by the military, this shadow fleet doesn't hesitate to obstruct even US naval vessels, creating navigational hazards and forcing route changes. For local fishermen without naval support, encountering this fleet typically means one option: retreat or face aggression. As the fisheries of Southeast Asia become barren due to overexploitation, Chinese fleets are forced to expand their reach to distant oceans, including African and Latin American waters, avoiding only the maritime zones of countries strong enough to enforce their boundaries. One notable incident involved an enormous fleet near Argentina, aiming to capitalize on the squid-rich waters that local fishermen have relied on for generations. These fleets are among the leading causes of marine stock collapse globally. Not only do they fish in unauthorized zones, but they also invade protected marine areas. A notorious example occurred in 2020, when a fleet of 300 Chinese vessels was found harvesting sharks and squid within the protected waters surrounding the Galapagos Islands, a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Ecuador sounded the alarm internationally, warning that continuous plundering could permanently destroy this delicate marine ecosystem. Indonesia too has responded. In both 2019 and 2020, Indonesian authorities detained several Chinese vessels operating in conservation zones and targeting endangered species. One 2019 incident revealed a Chinese trawler using the ecologically devastating technique of bottom trawling, where heavy nets are dragged along the seabed, obliterating coral reefs and reducing thriving habitats to lifeless wastelands. In 2022 and 2023, Chinese vessels operating under local permits were caught exceeding fishing quotas and harvesting protected, commercially banned species, contributing to severe stock depletion. Sometimes, however, China miscalculates and targets countries that push back. Argentina, repeatedly finding Chinese vessels illegally fishing in its waters, has responded with military force. In 2016, after a Chinese vessel tried to escape interception, it was sunk by the Argentine Navy. These colossal fishing operations not only decimate local ecosystems, but also leave economic devastation in their wake. Coastal communities that depend on fishing find themselves impoverished as local fishermen are driven out by intimidation and resource exhaustion. When the Chinese fleets move on, they leave behind deserted seas, shattered livelihoods, and no viable means for recovery. A particularly devastating aspect of this exploitation stems from China's demand for shark fin soup, considered both a delicacy and status symbol. After exhausting domestic shark populations, Chinese fleets turn to international and foreign waters, capturing sharks solely for their fins. The fins are sliced off while the animals are alive, after which the mutilated sharks are dumped back into the sea to suffocate. The rest of the shark is discarded, wasted entirely, just to obtain the valuable fins. However, the sheer scale of these operations is only part of the problem. The unethical techniques they use amplify the destruction. Chinese vessels routinely ignore local fishing regulations, often favoring highly efficient yet extremely harmful methods like bottom trawling. The resulting damage to coral reefs and seabeds is so severe that some ecosystems remain unrecovered, even years after trawling bans. In Peru, the impact has been catastrophic, with jumbo squid catches dropping by 70%, a trend echoed in North Korean waters, where Chinese overfishing has severely reduced squid populations. To compound matters, many Chinese vessels also employ forced labor. Investigations by the Environmental Justice Foundation uncovered 12 Chinese boats using North Korean laborers under coercive conditions. This not only breaches human rights, but also violates international sanctions against North Korea. These laborers are often shuffled between ships and confined at sea for years, sometimes up to a decade, with their wages funneled directly to the North Korean regime, funding its militarization and nuclear ambitions. North Korean workers reportedly face three bleak options: military conscription, state-controlled plantation work, or deployment on Chinese vessels. One man, having served 7 years on a boat, said neither he nor his family received any compensation. At the end of his service, the regime merely built him a house, scant reward for nearly a decade lost at sea. These accounts align with other findings about North Korea, sending tens of thousands of forced laborers to Chinese processing plants and factories. The reason these fleets can remain at sea for such extended periods lies in their immense logistical capacity, which rivals even that of the US military. Many Chinese vessels receive direct government subsidies for fuel, and large tankers refuel them at sea, allowing continuous operation for months or even years. The government also funds the construction of new fishing vessels, giving Chinese fleets a strategic advantage over competitors. Massive supply ships accompany the tankers, delivering everything from gear and tools to comforts like snacks and electronics. To maximize productivity, factory ships travel alongside fishing vessels. These floating factories process the catch immediately, canning, freezing, or storing it in refrigerated tanks for shipment to global markets. Remnants like bones and guts are ground into fish meal, while live catch is preserved in onboard tanks. For higher market value, crew rotations are managed by transfer ships that bring fresh workers to the fleets without requiring vessels to return to port. Support ships also provide food and other necessities, while larger ships include full kitchens and mess halls serving hundreds. Though medical conditions on board are reportedly subpar, some vessels include basic hospitals for injuries or illness. In cases of severe medical emergencies, these same illegal vessels often call on local coast guards, ironically requesting help from the very countries whose waters they exploit. Crew accommodations are minimal, usually involving cramped dormitory-style bunks. Only the largest vessels offer access to communal entertainment like TVs or satellite internet, while most fishermen pass time as sailors have for centuries. One particularly lucrative target is the Atlantic Blue Hole, a 2,500 square mile area about 200 miles off Argentina's coast. This location, where the continental shelf drops sharply to depths of 2,600 feet, creates an ideal marine environment due to the mixing of warm and cold currents. Despite local nations enforcing strict conservation policies, Chinese vessels routinely violate them to harvest shortfin squid during summer, then shift to South America's Pacific coast in winter to catch Humboldt squid. These species have brief lifespans, and excessive harvesting disrupts their reproductive cycles, diminishing population numbers and prompting even more harmful fishing techniques. While most of these activities occur in international waters, Chinese ships blatantly ignore sustainability guidelines, accelerating marine collapse in foreign regions as they did at home. To hide their tracks, Chinese vessels rapidly process their catch, obscuring its origin and species, aided by state-backed support. International law requires all vessels over 300 tons to emit location signals, yet Chinese ships often disable their transponders to avoid detection, making it nearly impossible for smaller nations to monitor or deter them. The harm caused by these fleets extends beyond marine depletion. Over the past 50 years, global marine life has been reduced by half, mostly due to overfishing. This poses serious risks for millions who depend on seafood. Additionally, the fleets pollute extensively. Many Chinese ships are old and lack proper environmental safeguards, leaking fuel and engine oil into the water. Discarded fishing materials like nylon lines and nets choke or starve marine life, and fish contaminated with microplastics increasingly make their way onto human dinner plates. Massive fleets also produce vast amounts of waste, both human and material. In Ecuador, local beaches have been found littered with plastic labeled in Chinese, disrupting tourism-dependent economies. It's estimated that 30% of the garbage on the Galapagos shores originates from Chinese fishing operations. Cleanups require huge efforts, while China refuses any responsibility. In West Africa, vessels registered through shell companies and flying local flags dodge international fishing restrictions. Confrontations with local fishermen are common, with some sabotaging Chinese gear, but such resistance is rare as the Chinese vessels are often too large, numerous and well-equipped to challenge. To fight back, international watchdogs are documenting both environmental destruction and human rights violations aboard these vessels. Workers from Indonesia, North Korea and Vietnam, as well as locals in Africa, report being forced to endure extreme labor conditions. Crews often work 24-hour shifts with few breaks. Abuse is rampant. A France 24 report found that every African crew member interviewed experienced physical violence. Safety protocols are minimal or non-existent, with non-Chinese workers frequently denied training or protective gear. Many labor without life jackets, even in storms, resulting in frequent fatalities and disappearances at sea. Nonetheless, global pressure is mounting, pushing China to take limited action. The government has stopped subsidizing some violators and established an internal blacklist. However, fishing violations in China are treated as administrative infractions, not criminal offenses, and rarely result in meaningful punishment. Despite public pledges to improve sustainability and accountability, skepticism remains high due to the government's poor track record. Still, because China heavily relies on seafood and is the world's largest exporter, failure to reform could trigger widespread food insecurity and collapse of the industry itself. For now, though, there's little sign that Chinese fleets plan to abandon their predatory strategies. These massive operations, functioning like gigantic seaborne predators, continue to ravage ecosystems, drain marine life, and exploit vulnerable laborers, leaving a trail of destruction that spans the globe.